And one of the things that I really appreciate about this notion of masking, I don't know if that's a term that people even knew to use, but if you are a neurodivergent person and you are living out in the world, there is so much that you need to feel you have to protect. I mean, like, that's just what it's like. And it's funny because so many things that I've hidden in my life because I didn't think it was okay. We've talked about how I used to sleep with a group of rubber fish connected by a rubber band. Like when I went to camp, like, tell me you're neurodivergent without telling me you're neurodivergent, I guess. Even the sleeping thing, like sleeping with your hands tucked under, that's just how I sleep all the time. Didn't know it was a symbol of neurodivergence. Apparently it is. What do they call them? Dinosaur hands, T-Rex hands. Always have to do that. One of the other interesting things, again, this is my amateur research. There are so many quizzes online that try and help you figure out if you're neurodivergent. So this indicated to me, okay, people are looking for this. Many of them require that you pay, which was another indicator. People must really be looking for this if companies are looking to capitalize on people who are literally searching what I did. Am I neurodivergent? Free quiz. That's what I looked up. So the other challenge, in case you couldn't guess from the list that I gave above, how do you find out if you're neurodivergent? One way would be to have a diagnosis, meaning if you've been told you're on the autism spectrum disorder, if you've been told you have OCD, if you've been identified as having a sensory processing disorder, that's a little bit your ticket into the world of neurodivergence. But I took a quiz that we won't go over here. But the funny thing is, this quiz says that it's designed to find out which kind of neurodivergent you are. And I was like, well, that's great. Who knows what I'm going to come up with? This test, it told me I have Tourette's. It told me it's highly likely that I have Tourette's. Now, what's interesting to me as a neuroscientist is we have a very specific way that we clinically diagnose people who have Tourette's. If I were to take a Tourette's quiz, pretty sure I'd come up negative. But my neurodivergence test directed me towards that as my possible diagnosis. So for anyone who knows anything about Tourette's, you might be saying, okay, well, I can guess the kind of questions. Jonathan, do you have any guess, knowing me, why it might have come up? And I'm not saying the test is like wrong. I do think that's a pretty bold thing for a test to be saying. Why might I have come up with Tourette's?
I don't know that much about Tourette's or the classification, the requirements to fit into that box. But if I had to guess, posit that maybe you had a little sprinkle, you have a very hard time when something wants to pop out of your mouth, not having it pop out.
Oh, very good. Okay, very good. So some of the questions did focus on what level of uncomfortability I feel with certain situations in either wanting to say something, wanting to express something, not being able to kind of control, interrupting, things like that. So yes, very good, Jonathan. To me, it a little bit indicated some of the imprecision that can occur when we are looking to the internet or to social media for specific diagnoses. So that's just like me putting my sort of like official hat on. However, I did find another test that is 20 questions that I would like to go over here. So take out your pencils, everyone. These are yes, no. So not the most precise way to do this kind of quiz, but it's a good yes, no. And I won't tell you how many yeses to be looking out for. Number 1, do you often find social situations confusing or overwhelming? Do you have an intense interest in specific topics that others might find unusual or obsessive?
This is a hard one. Which would you say that for me?
No.
What would you say for me?
This is a no for
I
you.
Okay.
No. I'm counting how many I think you should be saying yes to, and you and I will compare. The reason that I would say this is not, that this is a no for you and it's an absolute yes for me. Remember when we were watching the World Series and I wanted to talk forever about all of the detail? Right. And you made that face? Okay. So that's a yes for Mayim. I do have intense interest in specific topics that others might find unusual or obsessive. I mean, it's also not fair because, like, I'm a scientist, so, like, I'm trained to understand all sorts of interesting things that other people find unusual, but I think it goes beyond that. I could talk about pom-poms forever. Nobody wants to hear that. Number 3, do you find it hard or uncomfortable to make or maintain eye contact during conversations? Number 4, do you prefer routines and get upset when your routine is disrupted? And I've gotten upset 3 times because my routine was disrupted just in this podcast. Number 5, are you very sensitive to certain types of light, sounds, or textures? Number 6, do you often miss social cues or find it hard to interpret body language and facial expressions? Number 7, do you find it challenging to make friends or maintain friendships? Number 8, do you engage in repetitive behaviors or have specific rituals you feel compelled to perform?
Interesting.
Number 9, are you often told that you take things too literally or have difficulty understanding sarcasm?
We're very literal.
Number 10, do you find it difficult to manage or understand your own emotions? Number 11, do you often feel exhausted or anxious after social interactions? Number 12, do you find it difficult to focus on topics that are not of interest to you? Do you experience prolonged periods of intense focus on topics or activities that are of interest to you? Number 14, do you experience intense fascination with patterns, numbers, or categorizing information?
That's a tough one.
You don't have intense fascination. I mean, I'm just saying, I have never seen you intensely fascinated with patterns, numbers, or category. Like I will learn about the Dewey Decimal System with an intensity that is unmatched or You're not, I mean, you have a fascination, but I wouldn't say intense. 15, do you find abrupt changes in plans or unexpected events particularly distressing?
Nope.
Number 16, have you always felt different from others or like you don't fit in? Do you have a strong sense of justice and fairness and become particularly upset when these are violated? Do you often speak at length about your interests without realizing that other people in the conversation are no longer interested? 19, are transitions particularly challenging for you, like transitioning out of the shower? They know, or going between home and work?
That's an interesting one.
And the last one, did it feel like you needed to work harder than your peers in school to get the same grades?
Okay. Did you get any no's?
Let's just say I generally can make eye contact because of my like actorness, but if I'm not sort of putting on, you know, the ability to make eye contact, I don't love it. Hold on. I don't miss social cues. I really don't. I am over attuned to social cues. I'm over attuned to body language and facial expressions, to an impediment, level. So those are all yeses. I don't find it difficult to understand sarcasm, but I know many people who do. Yeah. So the rest of them, that would be a yes.
So how many?
I'm at 18.
I have. Let me just double check here. I have 4.5 yeses. No, 5.5 yeses.
Well, that's fascinating because you have 11 yeses. I was being conservative and you have 11 yeses.
Wow. I only have 5.5.
No,
for
you
myself.
don't.
Maybe 6.
Maybe 11. What are you?
Okay, what's the cutoff here?
Here we go. Here are the ones that I think. I think social situations are often confusing or overwhelming for you.
Didn't get a yes for that. Okay, go ahead.
You do find it uncomfortable to make eye contact not in work situations, in social situations, I would say. You are sensitive to light, sounds, and textures.
Yeah, that one I got yes for.
I would say that it's challenging for you to make friends and maintain friendships. Not because there's anything wrong with you or you're not social or like people or are likable, but I think because of a lot of these other features, it can be hard for you.
If you are not into bar culture, that changes the nature of friendship as an adult because those are the places where people go and friends.
I don't think that it's difficult for you to understand your own emotions, but I think sometimes, you have a great time managing them. I do think that you find it difficult to focus on topics that are not of interest to you.
Oh, yeah. Which number was that? I had a hard yes on that.
Yeah, that was 12.
Oh, yeah. 12 is a yes. 13 was a yes. I don't remember what 13 was.
Prolonged periods of intense focus. Yeah. You felt different from others and like you don't fit in.
Yeah. That's 16.
Yeah.
And then 20, I had a yes for. I had to work harder than my peers to try
and I think we know specifically why some of that is. So how many yeses are you supposed to be, kind of concerned about? What this quiz recommends is that if you're answering yes to many of these and this is the big thing, if you answer yes to many of these and you notice trouble in work, in relationships, in life, it might be wise to talk to a specialist. If you have yeses to all of these things and you don't have any trouble in your work, your relationship, like you don't necessarily have a problem that needs to be fixed. You may be in a job that really suits all of the things about you. You may be living in a world and in a city that suits all these things about you. If you live in a place, for example, where there's constantly a lot of noise, a lot of fire engines, a lot of sirens, things like that, you may have more trouble than someone who's, let's say, living out in the country and has the same sensitivity. So it really depends not just on, are you answering yeses? Are you having trouble in areas of your life where this kind of diagnosis might then lead to more information? That's what we encourage people to look into.
And even if you're not having trouble, it may give a little bit of insight into what you may think was normal. So I know a lot of people who might not realize that there's some tension in social situations. They just thought that's what social situations are. They might not realize that how they function plays a role in that. So it can just help shed more light, bring more self-awareness.
I want to go into a little bit about what's awesome about being neurodivergent and what are some of the amazing things that happen when we stop seeing ourselves as something to fix and seeing our brains as something to better understand. This notion of neurodivergence is a sort of cultural mirror that is held up to us that in many cases helps us understand why we sometimes seem to experience the world so intensely, right? For those of us who either have been told or have felt that we're too much, that we feel too much, or that we're too sensitive, or for people who have been told we're experiencing things in a way that other people can't handle. This term can be very comforting because in many cases it's a superpower. It's a superpower to be able to feel deeply. It's a superpower to be able to experience things deeply. But for many people, especially those who might have dyslexia, dyspraxia, dysgraphia, it may not feel like a superpower in the moment. So part of this also, kind of move towards understanding the broader implications of neurodivergence is to open us up to understanding what some of these other things are. So a lot of people who are dyslexic, in the olden days, you were slapped with that label and it stayed with you forever. And now what I love about the conversation about neurodivergence is I might be dyslexic, but here's other ways that my brain works that other people's don't, who are not dyslexic. What's the opening that neurodivergence is giving me? Many people do have a special spiritual connection, a different way to look at the world that brings them an intense amount of joy and perspective. Those things also come along with being neurodivergent. Jonathan talks a lot about creativity. Linear thinking and clear thinking is very important. Rational thinking is very important, but also that's not what dreams are made of, right? Dreams are made of imagining what's not possible and thinking beyond what these four walls, encourage us to operate in.
Some of the greatest advancements in our culture and our society over the history of time have been made by people who think and see things that do not yet exist. They're able to imagine a future that has not yet been created and see the limits of today's society and find ways to push society forward. And doing that requires the ability to think differently. So the linear thinking that so many people are just born with or naturally do, when you're dyslexic, when you have a difference that doesn't allow you to fit in to the regular system, those gifts and abilities of being able to perceive differently, to imagine differently, to use different parts of your brain to get yourself where everyone else is going easily, they become more attuned and developed. And we see that over and over again. Eric Weinstein says that the people at the edges of our classrooms, often the kids that are not fitting in, that are struggling, are the ones that will help find the innovative and novel solutions that other people aren't thinking about.
And before those of you who don't identify as neurodivergent feel bad about not being neurodivergent, it is a very large spectrum. Everybody's on some part of it. But speaking to that historical point, Jonathan, there's a lot of really interesting and, kind of playful, not rewriting of history, but revisiting of many historical figures throughout our history. Some of the most notable ones, Emily Dickinson. There's been a really interesting analysis of her poetry, her writing, and Albert Einstein, right? We used to be like, oh, nutty professor, right? Albert Einstein was dyslexic, And they believe he also likely had ADHD and was on the autism spectrum. They've obviously studied his brain after he passed away. In addition, think about artists. Think about artists like Andy Warhol. They're pretty sure Andy Warhol was dyslexic and also on the spectrum. And, we have this really amazing list that we pulled of actors and public folks, many of whom we've had on our podcast who have talked about aspects of neurodivergence. So ADHD is something that we hear of a lot from creative people. We've had Joel McHale on, Mel Robbins, who talks about ADHD and dyslexia. Jodie Sweetin talked about it with us. We've talked with people about obsessive compulsive disorder. Howie Mandel, Simon Helberg from The Big Bang Theory was on our podcast talking about OCD. Mara Wilson, Daryl DMC McDaniels from Run DMC. He talked about OCD. We've had many people talk about being dyslexic and having other special abilities. Our episode with Lorna Byrne touched on that. And many of our guests have talked about either bipolar disorder, social anxiety, many of these different things that all fall under that neurodivergent umbrella. Also wanted to give a shout out to Billie Eilish, who does have Tourette's syndrome and has talked about it openly. And it's really, really such an incredible, fascinating journey to watch her talk about it and what her experience is with Tourette's. Many, many actors and Blick people are coming out more. They're more comfortable talking about it. Henry Winkler has done a lot with dyslexia. Bill Gates, dyslexic and ADHD. He did pretty well for himself. So many actors, Ethan Hawke and Whoopi Goldberg and Anthony Hopkins, Simone Biles, Tom Holland, Selena Gomez, Leonardo DiCaprio, Megan Fox. I mean, just this list is unreal. Orlando Bloom, Will Smith, dyslexia, Keanu Reeves, dyslexia, Woody Harrelson has talked about ADHD. Rachel Bloom has talked about ADHD. Just so interesting how many people also feel comfortable to now talk about these things. I think because we're having this opening, that instead of it feeling like a punishment, instead of it feeling like a shaming, it's actually something about you that in many cases we can't change. Are there behavioral things that we can adjust around it to make our lives easier, to make other people understand us? Absolutely. But as Jonathan said, we don't want to not have this diversity of processing and of the human experience. It's what makes everything so colorful.
That's absolutely true. It's really about understanding ourselves, understanding how we function, but not always changing it. So, for some people, ADD medication, ADHD medication is really helpful to help them be able to do the things they want to do. For me, when I tried it, it was not the right fit. I used it, I experimented with it. And then what I have found is that certain supplements can be really helpful, not all the time, but what I need to have a sharper level of zeroing in. Also, caffeine impacts me in certain ways, sleep, exercise. So in all of these, I would say that it's about understanding ourselves, not necessarily fixing but getting the support we need when we need it.
This is a great point, Jonathan, and one that leads us into a little conversation I'd like to have about neurochemistry and the brain and what's going on in the neurodivergent brain.